You think you know me.
Today at Security VIP, we feature the Chief Revenue Officer at XSponse, Blake Albertsen. Get ready for nothing but the truth.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Security VIP podcast. It's your home for nothing but the truth. As always, I am your host, Taylor May. And on today's episode, we are featuring the Chief Revenue Officer of a company called XSponse. His name is Mr. Blake Albertsen. Blake, my friend, welcome to SVIP. How are you?
Good. How are you, Taylor? Thanks for having me. This is great.
Doing good, man. I feel like it's been a while since I even had you on. I know you spent some time at Salient. I've had Salient on an episode in the past. We spoke about earlier before we kicked this off live. Acre. I've had Acre on in the past. Obviously, some well-known names in the industry. But your name's been around for a while, just like my name has been. You know, whether it's good or bad. Obviously, probably more bad on my side than your side. But for my listeners, brother, just tell us about yourself, and we'll dive into the company and kind of what y'all specialize in.
Yeah. So, I've been doing this, from the manufacturer's perspective for a little over 20 years in the security industry. And, really love what I do from a day-to-day perspective. Helping save lives is my biggest, motto is if I can save one life, that I've done my job. So, really involved in, lots of different organizations over the years. But, the big one is, I was at Salient for a number of years, and now I've taken on the realm of XSponse, and it's an exciting opportunity for us to talk about today.
And I like the name, but I don't understand what exactly it means. So I want my listeners to understand exactly the meaning behind the name. But you mentioned something earlier, saving lives, right? And obviously, I think I did some research about the company, heavy in education and school districts, and I think that's kind of been the inception of the company. So maybe walk us through the inception of XSponse, the whole mission, and maybe the reasoning behind the name.
Yeah. So, XSponse, this was a company that was developed by, an old Microsoft engineer as well as an integrator based out of Long Island, New York. And, they both put their heads together, with the inception of, making, things a little bit safer for schools initially, right? And the big one is they were looking at initially the company started, in 2017. And when they started in 2017, it was a thought process of really having a vape detector being installed into an HVAC system. So, when they started this company, it's really around, safety. But then the two people got together, John Gilson, our CTO, and Lee Mandel, our CEO. They both got together on this, and they were like, we can take this so much further, because Lee had actually developed a product which was a one button push down for school districts. And so, it took, different software platforms and, different, technologies to make everything happen. But, at the end of the day, they, came together, and said, man, we can come up with so much more that we can offer, to these schools. The big one for me as a father of three was, this company has something really, really special, right? And the thing that pulled on my heartstrings, a big one, was when I was going through the interview process with XSponse, we had two gentlemen that are part of our organization, Andy Pollock and Ryan Petty. And they unfortunately lost their daughters in the Parkland shooting. And, that really tugged on me pretty hard, that I want my children to come home safe every single day from school. That should be their safe environment when they go to school. So this was one of those areas where I looked at the company and looked at what they were doing with the wearable technology to, some of the announcing and some of the detecting and some of those kind of things that we offer. And I looked at it and I'm like, man, this is something that nobody else is doing in the industry right now. It would take multiple manufacturers to do this. So XSponse really came around, as a, kind of a differentiator in the market.
You're 100% right. The environment that kids and students now have to grow up in going to school is completely different. Obviously, when you went to school, even when I went to school, and I know I'm 32 years old, but back in elementary school, we weren't doing active shooter drills. We didn't have a
Nope.
mental health issue, right? And we were just going to school to learn and to play and to hopefully graduate, right? And that was the ultimate goal. But now it's like these kids come up in a whole different new environment because social media influence is through the roof. There's people that are just obviously criticizing kids at such a young age. Bullying's happening. Then you've got these kids that have, come up maybe from broken families and they have to experience some kind of tragic event, and that just affects them and their whole personality, and then they do ill will to a school. So it's just a whole different environment that kids nowadays have to go through. And when I look at your website and XSponse and everything that you guys provided, obviously on the school safety and security element, I see a lot of different products here on the website. X Announce, X Connect, X Detect, Display, Guardian, Integrate, Light Shield, Wearable. So maybe walk us through some of the value proposition of the products and why it's applicable to obviously school safety and students, but some of the other verticals you guys specialize in.
Absolutely. I mean, we kind of walked through, a lot of our different products, and we kind of walked through our different products. We've got the different, aspects, of a wall panic button. All of our product, Taylor, is based on a PoE plus plus type, infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we're not a battery powered, product. We're not a lick 'em stick 'em kind of product. However, the beautiful part about this is that when it is physically shipped out, you could start pre-programming this system before it even arrives to your site. So whether it's an education facility, whether it's a healthcare facility, a correction facility, a large campus environment, large corporate campus, whatever it is, this deployment is really, really easy from that perspective because we can have it all pre-programmed prior to it even arriving. We are just a dealer-centric, organization. We don't sell direct to the end user. So that's one of the big, huge, value adds that we have from a manufacturing perspective is we're not selling direct to the end user. Are we out there trying to develop those end users to hand off to those resellers? Absolutely, every single day. But from our wall panics to our desktop panics, those two items, they're programmable. And they kind of look a little bit, I get a lot of people saying, wow, your wall button looks like an STI button. Well, it's not, because it's actually a smart button inside. So, it's, not just a normally open, normally closed kind of contact in there. Same kind of concept with the desk panic button. Those also have, an ability to offset a trigger. Has a little halo light around them so that they will showcase if it's green or red, of where that button's been pushed. It will show up on a map overlay, of where that button's been pushed as well. And then we have our wearables. So this wearable technology is based on a BLE network kind of concept.
Mm.
And, we have two different versions of the wearable. We have a rechargeable wearable, and then we also have a 3-year battery wearable. And the rechargeable ones, those ones are more of, the ones you would hand out to your visitors that come to campus or come to your facility, and you want to, track where they're at on the map. You can track them if they go outside of a geographical area, they go into a girls' or boys' locker room and they shouldn't be there. Is that going to send off an alarm? We can set it up to do those thresholds. And then the teachers, with all these teacher unions, the HIPAA regulations with the healthcare workers, a lot of times in their contracts, they state that they can't be tracked. So when you hand them out a 3-year battery one out of the box, those aren't tracked. So we can set them up to be tracked, but, right out of the box, they're not tracked. And then we kind of get into some other of our triggers, like our environmental duct mount. So this is where, we have a game changer in my mind.
I was about to say that it literally says the game changer on the website. I was going to go to that next product. So you talk about that because I see you guys post about that. Obviously, Brad Betcher, man, was a previous colleague of mine, a rep of mine. He was talking about this as well. Talk about the game changer. I want to hear it.
Well, it's a game changer. I mean, it's exciting because just like in football and baseball and whatever, there's some sort of a game changer that happens, with athletes.
Yeah.
I think when I'm looking at this product, I think it's a big game changer for me, right? Because everybody else has vape detectors that, have a height restriction or have to be installed like a little fire alarm,
Mm.
or a smoke detector on the ceiling. Well, they have height restriction of 8 feet or sometimes even less than that. And, these actually physically install in the actual ductwork of the HVAC unit in that bathroom. So, what we found is, students were standing on the toilet seats and blowing into the air handler. Well, what happens? They're blown into the air handler. Are those other, products that are mounted on the other side of the bathroom, are they going to pick it up? Probably
Right.
not.
Right.
So this is a game changer in my mind because it's on instantly, bringing in that THC, that different vape masking material. We've had some, kind of interesting stories, from the field that, we can even detect, when somebody's going number two. And why is that, important? I mean, it's important because we actually have one school right now that said that was important to them because they want to monitor their, food services, to make sure that they don't have an uptick in the amount of kids going to the bathroom
Mm.
after lunch. So it's that extra layer of safety. It's the game changer in my mind because nobody else is doing it.
Is that what you see too, Blake? Do you see like walk me through a kind of typical adoption of your product arsenal right here? Are people typically going with something like the environmental duct mount and then they're pairing it with like a wall mount or the wearables? I mean, what does a typical sale look like for you guys? Or does it just depend on the vertical?
It really depends, Taylor. I mean, I've had, schools go from saying we want everything
Yeah.
that you guys offer to healthcare facilities saying, "Oh my gosh, you guys have, vape detectors which are huge, or an environmental duct mount detector which are huge right now in the you know healthcare industry because a lot of patients are sitting there in their rooms recovering from a surgery or something like that, and they're actually having family members vape in their rooms, and
Mm.
that's actually a HIPAA violation from what I understand. So when you kind of look at that, you're like, wow, there's different opportunity for our product in different elements. I think the big pieces of, our products, though, is a lot of people are going after that wearable tech and wanting to have, the ability to press a button and be able to see that that button's been, triangulated, and we can nail it down on a map to, roughly a 4 to 10 foot area, depending on wall types and those kind of things. So, really having that extra first responder assistance, I think is key, from our technology, whether we have those wall panics in the office or we have a desktop panic button on every single teacher desk or every single nurse's station or, every single, reception counter. There's lots of different, use cases that we've come across so far with this.
I would imagine when you install like a those wearables or those panic buttons, I mean, are customers asking for the integration to receive it with, whether it's an SOC, whether it's a VMS, whether it's a PSIM? I mean, walk me through kind of the SOP process typically, or when an alert is actually pushed, where does that go to? How are people handling that, et cetera?
Yeah, so I mean, it's coming through our Guardian software,
Perfect.
and our Guardian software is a cloud-based through AWS. It can also be on-prem or virtual as well. In a from a backup perspective, we can have that automate, text messages, phone calls, emails out of the system directly to who you need it to go to. We can initiate it also to go to a central station, and that central station has the ability to tie it into the 911 dispatch center, so we can have that first responder. When you kind of look at, you know, Andy Pollock and Ryan Petty, with losing their daughters, and what that response looked like at the Parkland event, at that high school. We kind of look at this and we're like, wow, there's definitely there was some issues there from a response standpoint. And that response standpoint was, they didn't respond quick enough
Right.
to what was physically going on. And why couldn't that have happened quicker? Now we look at it and we're like, if they had wearables, that could have really saved a lot of lives, number one. Number two, Andy and Ryan have both told me multiple times, like, this wearable would have saved our daughter's lives instantaneously if the teachers had known, because they went in there and they pulled the fire alarm.
Right. Are you at maybe just curious? Are you at liberty to discuss like does Parkland use this today? Are they using anything around XBots and what y'all's
Not that I'm
product?
aware of. No.
Not yet.
Yeah.
We should say not yet, right? It's
Not
coming.
yet.
It's coming. No, this is huge, man. Because I look at this when you're selling, you're honestly selling a full suite here, and you're also selling an experience. I talk about an experience a lot now in the security industry versus siloed products that just do one thing. But when you look at something like this, you're really just selling a whole experience when it comes to public safety and student safety and obviously turning reactive mindsets to proactive mindsets. So it's really interesting. And I guess from the CRO hat, let's pivot to kind of your role at the company being the revenue leader. Walk me through kind of like maybe some misconceptions or maybe some hiccups that you've experienced so far. I know you're still under a year in the role, but maybe walk me through some wins or some challenges or maybe some pushback that you've gotten that you were able to overcome pushing a solution like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the big pieces here, Taylor, that, I see on a daily basis is, everybody's like, well, I don't have any money.
Yeah, of course.
Well, there's definitely grants out there that we can, help try to, find for those different organizations. But, the there's a lot of different aspects to my role here that I'm doing, not just from the sales standpoint, but from the marketing standpoint as well. And, really focused on getting the product and the name out there. And that's, been, a lot of fun over the last, several months of getting our product finally launched and having a pretty big, following so far. We've got, several projects in the works. And, it's a rewarding feeling not having somebody basically saying, we don't understand what you guys do. It's more of where were you guys 2 months ago when we needed this?
That's awesome.
And so hearing, these organizations say, we need to make budget for you. We need to make this happen. We need to find budget. We need to have you guys help us with putting this in our facilities. That's a rewarding feeling, right? And it's also, finding, the right mix of product for their individual site. So a lot of our product, when we look at the wall panic, we look at the shield and the display and, some of our other products, they have the wireless nodes built into them. So they don't have to increase the amount of equipment that's needed, to make that triangulation of the network for the geofencing to work, for the wearables to be pushed.
Well, no one's got budget until something happens, right? That's what
Right.
they all
And
say.
that's, I mean, is what's the value of one life?
Right.
And that's what I keep asking myself, and I ask everybody that I talk to, what's the value of one of your lives if you were to lose one?
Yeah. And I think you can't put a price on that, man. It's
You
just the
can't.
price.
There's no price.
Yeah. Um, let's walk through like the competitive landscape, man. Who else is doing this? Who else does similar things? Or maybe not. Maybe you guys are the unicorn right now. No one actually is doing what you guys are providing from an experience level. Maybe walk me through some of the competitive landscape a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at, a lot of our different, potential candidates that would be considered competitors in the marketplace, Taylor. And, when I kind of look at the competitive landscape, there's not really one manufacturer that hosts everything that we do.
Mhm.
Right. So when we look at, our competitors, yeah, there's competitors out there that do the wall panics and the desktop panics, and there's competitors out there that do the wearables. There's competitors out there that do, different detect type products, where they can detect, vape and those kind of things. But when you look at our shield and you look at our displays, we have cameras built into those. We have, strobe lights built into those. They meet, epileptic seizure compliancy with the strobe lighting. So when we kind of look at, our different product schemes here that we're looking at, nobody really competes in our minds yet with what we can host underneath the one hood. When I've looked at multiple different manufacturers, it looks like, it's going to take, anywhere from 4 to 8 different manufacturers to do what we do underneath one hood. So when I look at that from a competitive landscape, I kind of look at us as kind of the leader from that aspect in this industry right now, as the ability for us to be able to pull in opportunity, as far as one manufacturer to do it all for them.
Yeah, no, that's the advantage. I guess my only, if I was playing devil's advocate, and you probably get this a lot too, man, is like, okay, cool, XSponse has got everything that I need, but I already have an existing system in place. Are you guys? Let's talk about integrations. Are y'all integrating with anyone currently in the industry when it comes to the products you guys develop?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a full web-based API that's wide open, and then we also have input-output modules to be able to bring in third-party devices.
Nice.
When we kind of talk about the input-output modules, I've got kind of some interesting use cases from those already. That people were like, we thought we were going to have to write a huge integration to our access control system with the API, and we were able to plug in one of our input modules directly into the access control system, and it was able to do a remote lockdown without having to do any API write.
Nice.
So from a perspective of tech, I was pretty shocked and I was pretty excited about that because that's some of the hardest things to do in the industry right now, is to get others to have those discussions around their API, and even share their APIs for that matter.
That's huge, man. Just the more I look at the site, the more I look at like the products, and I've told you, I think I told you this a couple of days ago, is I would love to get my hands on like the GameChanger and just play with it. And well,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lead to what I'm gonna do next at SVIP, but something like that just to play with, to test with, and just see in a real world application would be honestly pretty sweet. And
Yeah, for sure.
uh, it's definitely something I think is unique. And when I look at that too, it's like, yeah, I've seen, like, obviously everyone knows like Halo in the industry, those things you mount up, but like this, like you said, goes right into the duck, which is, how much of a range does that cover though? Like, do you have to install multiple of those, or what's the typical range that would cover for like, vaping and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends, Taylor, on how big the room is,
Okay.
right? And how big that bathroom is. Is the bathroom huge? Is it small? I mean, typically it just really depends on where we're going and how large that bathroom physically is. Do they have multiple air handlers? How big, how many stalls are in that bathroom? Are we installing it in other areas of the, facility as well? I mean, potentially, but when we kind of talk about our X Detect, you know, series with that, we have a lot of ability to really dive into, having that device in other areas of the school. And then when we look at our Shield device is really cool too, because it allows you to have that intercommunication. It allows you to have, some different sensors and that kind of stuff. Like now in the education sector, we're seeing that some school districts are requiring that if a temperature is above a certain threshold,
Right.
that they have to vacate that classroom. And that Shield device does that for them. So that allows them to know real live, feed of what is physically happening in that classroom. The bigger aspect is that that Shield device also has a camera built into it with an electromagnetic shutter on it,
Mm.
as well as our displays. We have a single-sided and double-sided display with electromagnetic shutter. We all know that these you know different unions don't want to be recorded during certain aspects, but what happens in the neighborhood of an incident?
Right.
They want to know, the first responders need to know what they're going into. And so if this shutter can open up based on the wearable push button, and it opens up that camera, now that VMS is able to showcase that live image of what's going on. We're not a VMS by any means, Taylor, and we don't want to be. So what's great about our cameras that we have embedded into our tech is that, they're ONVIF RSTP streamed cameras. They
Nice.
play with anybody's VMS.
Well, that's huge, right? We talk about being ONVIF compliant. We talk about interoperability with existing VMS players. You got the Genetechs and the Milestones, and your former predecessor, Salient, right? Just well-known,
Yeah.
respected VMS players in the game. And if you can interoperate and use and push to those systems, it's a win-win for the end user.
Right. Absolutely. Agreed.
Walk me through, and you don't have to answer this question directly, but just walk me through kind of the typical pricing model. I mean, I see obviously hardware costs. You've got the Guardian, your software costs. So is it a SaaS model? Is it per device? Is it license per year? Walk me through kind of the typical
Yeah.
model for you guys.
Yeah, so our devices are, there is a hard cost, as far as our, hardware goes. We also have the ability for, um, different, financing options, as well as, having relationships with PSA and ScanSource. So they all have different, abilities to be able to, you know, sell the product in different facets. We do have our software. It's a basic site license software. And, we have three different versions. We have Essential, and then we have Professional and Enterprise. And the basic delta differences between those three software platforms, Taylor, is, Essential does up to 15 devices, Pro does 75 devices, and Enterprise does unlimited amount of devices per site. We do have a SMA, software maintenance agreement, on a 1, 3, and 5 year option, as well as we have other modules too that we can add into it. For instance, like text messaging, phone calls, emails, central station dispatch, those kind of pieces. We have the mobile software. And then we also have, something that we're going to release later this year is the screen takeover.
Mm.
So, I mean, I don't know if you walked into a high school recently, but I have a high schooler. So I walked into their high school a few weeks ago, and I was blown away at the amount of kids that, were sitting there with their Chromebooks that they were issued by the school, and they all had headphones on. So
Mm.
the teacher gave them like a 15, 20-minute lesson, and then they had headphones on and they were head down in their computers doing work. And I'm like, what would happen? I asked the principal, I'm like, what would happen in an instant in a live issue with these students with their headphones on? How would they be notified?
Yeah.
He's like, uh, we just start screaming and yelling. I'm like, but well, what happens if we were able to take their screens over
Yeah.
and they couldn't do anything on their computers? He's like, you guys might have something there. I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's game changing. So another game changer, man.
Well, well, that's gonna be the theme of the episode, game changer. It's huge because you have these massive school districts who issue massive amounts of laptops, Chromebooks, and iPads and things of that nature. So imagine being able to take over every single laptop, especially when an active shooter event may be happening, or something is being threatened at the school. That's a huge advantage, man. And I would imagine, again, are you currently working with your daughter's school district, or is that something still in
My
the
son's
pipeline? What's
my,
up?
my son's school district. Yeah, we're working on that whole school district right now. I'm trying to get him to buy off on it.
Well,
So,
there's some massive school districts here in Texas, man, and I'm sure you know that. Obviously,
oh yeah.
In Houston and Dallas, and obviously California's got some massive school districts out there, man.
Perfect.
Um, so as we wrap up here, Blake, walk me through like obviously goals for this year. I would imagine goals is just to adopt and expand as much as possible, get the name out there further, get a lot of wins, get a lot of repetitive wins, rinse and repeat. Make sure Brad Betcher is actually closing a lot of deals for you, and I'm sure that's a goal for you as the leader. But walk me through any other goals, man, that you're working on for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely focused. We've got our heads down. We're, looking at, you know, increasing our reseller channel, constantly. Before we even really launched, we had, you know, over 50 resellers that had signed on before we even launched as part of our founding club.
Wow.
And we had, ScanSource and also PSA that signed on, really before we even launched. So that was pretty exciting for me that, hey, we've got, these guys all signing on without even touching feeling product first. And so
You just tell Matt Barnett to order like $1 million order for it. Just go ahead and pre-order that.
perfect. Love it. Yeah, absolutely. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, that took a lot of work, to get to that point. And then, now we're continuing since we've launched, to continue to get our name out there with, social media, to, doing these things like what I'm doing with you, Taylor, as well as, all the shows that we're going to be at.
Yeah.
We're going to be at a ton of shows this year, from healthcare to education to, ISC West was coming up here pretty soon. So I'm pretty excited about that one. but we've got lots of shows, different, police shows that we're attending. Um, I think that there's a lot of different avenues for us that will increase our business over the next year. And, we're constantly pushing marketing, in different aspects and trying to, just get our name out there.
Yeah. But no, I get it, man. That's my goal is to highlight and promote. So if I can help add any kind of gas to the flame here, I'm happy to leverage, my connections and followers. And I guess for IC West, but it's coming up here pretty quickly. Typically my last question on my podcast is a 60-second hot seat, why the company. But for those attending IC West this year, why should they come see you? Why should they come talk to you and talk to you? Give me the value prop in 60 seconds about why XSponse.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have an amazing booth this year. It's, a 10 by 20 booth for, a new company coming to the market. I think it's going to be phenomenal for you guys to see what we're physically doing, touch and feel the product, and actually have the conversations with, not just myself, but my entire team, as well as, our founders, Lee Mandel and John Gilson, having that conversation and be able to meet with them and having conversations with our sales engineers, to be able to see what we're physically doing, touch the product, see the product, see it live in action. There's some definite really excitement there. We also have our, PA adapter that we have that will be able to kind of showcase a little bit of, how we can translate languages within our system. When
Nice.
you're looking at our system, you can translate it so that it says it in English and then it can follow it up in a foreign language in the correct way. Really diving into our product and the displays and the shields and the wearables and just touching, feeling the product, I think is going to be the biggest thing for ISC West is, having everybody stop by, say hi, and touch and feel the product, see what kind of quality that we're developing here in the US. And everything's manufactured in Pennsylvania. So we're pretty excited about, the Made in America thing.
That's important nowadays, man. Made in the USA.
That's right.
That's very important. Is there a booth number, Blake, you want to give a shout out to for people?
Yeah, it's 33093.
All right, man. That's a mouthful, right? I love how IC just throws some rant. Like, they should make it easier, man. I feel like on numbers now, because there's so many companies now that exhibit. I feel like they should put like zones or something, or just something a
Yeah.
little easier than a booth number. Because it was like, yeah, booth 5,645 dot 205, whatever. It's just like so many numbers nowadays.
Yeah,
But
and we're also in the emerging technology
there you
section
go.
of the booth.
There you
So
go.
it's pretty super excited about it. Can't wait to see everybody there.
No, I'm excited, man. IC West is always a great show. For those people looking to get more involved with yourself, my friend, as well as the company, where's the best place to do that?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can, reach out to me on my email, which is just blakea@xsponse.com. And, happy to help support anywhere I can.
Awesome, Blake. Well, appreciate the time, my friend. You're always welcome back on an episode, as well as your customers and your partners. And make sure to give Brad some shit for me, because he is the fantasy football loser for our last fantasy football league. So, Brad, if you're listening to us, man, better luck next season, my friend. No, guys and girls, that was Blake Albertsen, the CRO of a company called XSponse. Make sure to go connect with them on LinkedIn. Check out the company on the website. And if you are attending IC West, go see Blake and his team. Honestly, I love highlighting innovative and new companies I'm not familiar with. And this is a company that really excites me about the industry, especially for school districts and higher ed, especially with the world we live in today. So make sure to go check out XSponse and Blake at the show. If you guys want to get more information about our podcast, you can listen to us on every single major streaming platform: Spotify, Pandora, Apple, iHeart, Amazon, the list goes on. And make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, and we will catch you guys on the next one.